raise your hand or something. I was trying to speak louder, but it can't get much louder. Good idea. I'm going to pass out some handouts for you. I know the temptation is to look through there and see what it says. If you want to just be a little bit patient, we'll get through most of them. They aren't all the slides that we'll have on the screen today. If you look ahead, you might get all the answers before we get there. So no cheating.
Thank you, sir.
And these are the cheaper than the textbooks you have to buy in the bookstore. First of all, I am Rick Hart, and I am CFO down at Memorial Medical Center in Fort Lavaca, Texas. First test question, who knows where Fort Lavaca, Texas is? You do? Good. Good. I know Mr. Martin does. Did you find it by accident or not?
I looked it up on Google Maps today.
Oh, okay.
I was curious where it was.
It's about 2.5 hours south of here, it's right on the coast. And it's about 60 miles from Victoria, which is a little bit bigger than Fort Lavaca. It's about 12,000 people in the city. We have a county of about 20,000, Calhoun County. And if you follow high school football, you'll know that we're a pretty good team. I think they're fighting sand crabs, so that kind of scares you. That movie. Sounds ominous. It's a county-owned hospital. It's 25 beds. And I'll go into some of the reasons why it's 25 beds. And it's called the Critical Access Hospital. Can you help me? I'm going to put a lot of the talking on you, by the way, if I can, so please help me. Do you know what a critical access hospital is?
It's a hospital that basically it's the only hospital in the region, and it usually has anywhere from 50 or less beds, and it has to be within a certain distance of any other providers.
Okay.
And you get a different reimbursement rate than Medicare.
Yeah, that's essentially right. We'll go through the specifics. But a critical access hospital is a designation the government made for certain hospitals to keep them in business and to give them a slightly better reimbursement advantage to make sure that the critical services that the hospital provides are available in more communities. And so that's largely it. Now in this particular, well, I've got another slide on that one. Our payer mix there, it varies, and this is about a year ago. And our Medicare is down a little bit. Our self-pay, unfortunately, is up a lot. But this is the kind of payer mix we face there. And it's a very part of finances when we talk about finances. And so you can get a mixed Medicare. We get reimbursed at Medicare plus cost plus 1% as a critical access hospital. Other hospitals are on a PPS system or a DRG system or whatever, and you're not guaranteed to be getting your costs. But for the Medicare patients, which is about 44% of our business, we recover Medicare, our cost plus 1%. That's not much of a margin, but it's an important margin for us. Medicaid is about 14%. We wish we had more commercials and Blue Cross. They don't always pay great with the managed care systems we have, but they still are a little bit more competitive. Private pay is about 20% of our business. And working with our auditors last year, we estimated we get about 5 cents on the dollar from private pay patients or more reimbursement. We write off somewhere around $570,000 per month on bad debts that people just don't pay us. I don't think we're particularly unusual. I think national norm is under 10 cents on the dollar for private pay. And so it's a pretty tough market. So the larger your private pay population, the tougher it is. I just go through these departments. This shows some of the departments I have a chance to work with. And it's fun because you get different exposures. Because so you go from accounting, finance, which you'd expect, payroll, accounts payable, indigent care, patient financial services, IT, materials management, purchase and dietary, health information, HR, and compliance. Pass this back to you. How are you? I hope you can hear me that far back. If you can't, come on up closer. I'm losing my voice. I had a chance to meet a lot of you before the last talk. Thank you for that. It's interesting to find out what you're interested in, what your backgrounds are. They're kind of varied, which is normal. And I've got one finance person here who's going to correct me if I say something wrong. But part of it is just, I wanted to find out what you're interested in learning tonight. And do you have any particular interest that you want to voice, what you're interested in about finance, or relates to your own individual careers, your career paths? Anything in particular you want to make sure I cover? I view finance as kind of the basis for almost all businesses. It's kind of the universal theme. You always have operating people, which you're going into. You always have finances. This is an important part of any company. And so I think it's important for you to take the class about finance and accounting and get a feel for it and think how that's going to affect you in your own individual careers. Whether you're a CEO of Herman Memorial Southeast or somewhere else, finance is going to be the language you need to understand to make wise decisions. And you don't have to know how to do the accounting for it, but hopefully you'll understand what those numbers mean. There's a lot of numbers out there, but they all tell a story, so it's important.
Income statement and balance sheet, the combination of the two, especially what I'd like them to be exposed to tonight.
Okay, good.
Maybe tie the balance sheet to their own personal balance sheet.
Okay. I don't know if you each have individual balance sheets at home. I don't, but I guess I should. I know I'm probably in the hole somewhere out there, but the most important question is, for all of us, is favorite football team. Texas, I learned, is a state that really likes football. And I also learned that if you're voting for football this year, college football, Texas A&M, you better root for them above Oklahoma and above Texas. They kind of on that order right now. I kid about that. I was born in Texas. I was born in Fort Worth, Texas, decades ago. And then my parents kidnapped me and took me to California. And it took me a long time to find my way back, but I found my way back a couple of years ago. So now I'm a Texan again. I'm even trying to talk like y'all. How many true Texans do we have in here? Do we have any? Oh, excellent. Good. I came across something interesting the other day when I was trying to learn about how to speak Texan. And this, you may not know this, but you better know this. It's official. If you're talking to one person, you can say you. No, I'm just talking to one person. If you're talking to 2 to 4 people, you say y'all. Okay? I hear that lots. But if 5 or more, you're supposed to say all y'all. And so, how are all y'all doing tonight? Important stuff you have to know. Okay, what is a critical access hospital? We've got to get some good answers. And it's really, there's certain conditions of participation, COPs we have to abide by, and some of those include this. It has to be located in a rural area. It has to be no more than 25 beds. You had mentioned 50. There's other designations that can go up higher than that. But for a critical access hospital, you have to be 25 beds or less. And that's a combination of acute beds and swing beds. Now, do you know what a swing bed is? Okay.
Is it a bed that goes, that's not quite inpatient and like going towards a hospice?
It can't be exactly that. It's a bed that can, the same patient, the same bed could be acute one day, and because the doctor's designation can swing it to a rehab type of bed. And one of the conditions of participation for a critical access hospital is your length of stay. The swing bed days do not count against your acute bed days, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's exactly what a swing bed is. It allows the doctor to take a patient that is past the acute level of care and designate him as a swing patient or a swing bed patient, and reimbursement changes, the length of stay, it doesn't affect your critical access hospital status, and it's just a different way to classify a patient. I've had a chance to talk to some of our doctors when I get down to a patient being 10 days or longer and saying that it's a time to swing that patient to a rehab type environment. That's of course the doctor's decision, but sometimes they don't consider the impact it has on the hospital, and so we try and keep them mindful of that. No more than 25 beds. It has to have a 24-hour ER department, and the average length of stay is 96 hours or less. That's 4 days. So our average length of stay has to be 4 days. Last year I almost found out what would happen if it stayed 4 days. We got up to our audit period, they did our average length of stay. we're 4.00 something or other, which would have put us over. And so we pull out every admission and discharge record, and we started counting by hours, because it was so critical that we got it right. If we're over 4, I'm not sure what would have happened, but we didn't want to be there, but we came in at 3.99 something or other. But that's how important it is. You stay on everything to stay 4 or less. Like in your swing bid days, don't count against that. So those are things about the Critical Access Hospital. Before the night's over, we'll talk about this again, so make sure you're paying attention. And it's located more than 35 miles from the next closest. Now, in Port Lavaca, we're 30 miles from Victoria. They have 2 larger hospitals there, but we were grandfathered in because that was not the stipulation when we got our critical access status. But if we were to reapply for it now, we could not be considered critical access. We periodically go through the exercise of determining whether we still want to be critical access. If that's more beneficial to get that Medicare plus 1%, or whether we want to go ahead and go with a regular acute hospital. Each time the numbers come back and say we're better off as a critical access. Port Lavaca Memorial Medical Center had been as high as 73 beds several years back before they decided to downsize for this reason. So we've got the capacity. We probably have a population, but we downsized with the financial benefits. So this is what a critical access hospital is. Oh, I'm sorry. And because of that, as I mentioned, we get 101% of our costs. Now, the government giveth and the government taketh away. There's debate out there right now as they're facing the rising costs in healthcare that they may take that 1% away from the critical access hospitals. This would be reimbursed our costs only. We hope they don't do that. 1% is not much of a margin, but it's important to us. And so those are some of the things that go on at government levels that we just have to hope they're not going to mess us over. What do you think are some of your challenges, particularly those in healthcare or even those who are facing going to healthcare? What are the big challenges you see in healthcare today? What do you have to be prepared to face?
I think costs right now is a big issue.
Costs? Sir?
Overhead.
When you see hospitals having trouble, what's the first thing they do? They go to their costs. Controlling the costs is very important. What are some other issues?
Government involvement.
I'm sorry?
Access to it.
Access to healthcare, that's a big one right now, and there's a lot of programs going on to help expand access to care. You see government?
Yeah.
Yes. They're a blessing and they're a curse. They're your friend and they're your enemy all at once. What other kind of, and with that, I'll throw that in the whole area of regulation, which is government. What other types of challenges do you have?
Incentive alignment between the providers and the facility.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we have a medical staff of 16 down in Port Lavaca, and you would think in a small community like that we would have support and close alignment, not always. And so we're constantly trying to develop programs to make sure our physicians admit to us and use our services appropriately. And sometimes they compete with us, which hurts us. And I understand that you have to look at the whole healthcare spectrum in your community as well as best. And sometimes our own self-interest will allow that. What else?
Technology integration.
Okay, huge. There's so many demands on that's a big one. Any others? I put down a few just for consideration. Reimbursement, we talked about how you get paid. Regulations of federal government, the payer mix, I showed you our payer mix. That's a big one. And so it's how you market your business, what kind of physicians you bring in, what type of contracts you can strike with your local employers. Very important. Resources. I put them in 3 categories already. We talked about human resources, getting the right people. In a place like Port Lavaca, there's not 12,000 people to pull from, unless you pull from neighboring areas. And so you have to try and get the best quality people. Then you go out to technology. We talked about the IT thing, and the financial resources. I am asked fairly frequently as I go through the hallways, what's our next raise? How much will it be? And there's that's something that's very important to attract technology and attract the right people. They have that financial balance. You can't necessarily do what you want to do. And in Port Lavaca, this is to give you a little history. Over the last 3 years, we've lost over $3 million. And that's a lot of money, especially for a small hospital. And there's thousands of reasons for it, I won't go into that, but that's what we're facing. This year, pre-audit, we're made $670,000, huge turnaround in just a couple of years. The current administration's been there 2 years, so we can't take credit for all the bad stuff, but we're trying to make some changes. But investing in these resources, technology, human resources, and your financial resources are critical.
So your pre-audit numbers are positive this year?
They're positive, yeah, and we're hoping the auditors will be nice to us.
Yeah.
But you know, we'll get into audit in just a minute, but they're critical to your success and your accurate reporting, so that's part of it. We were talking about that. Market share we talked about, you know, your alignment of physicians and employers, alignment of your hospital with other resources, revenue sources that we talked, that kind of mixes in with all that. And then expense control is the first thing we talked about. I've been a CFO of the hospice as large as 700 beds, as small as, well, even smaller than this, 15 beds. And all of these same challenges are in every situation. When I was at Good Sam in Phoenix, Arizona, same exact challenges. Dollar levels might be different, but we face the same things. And so I think these are going to be universal. As you face your career, we're going to have to come up with some good answers in these areas. I think the creativity and the what you bring into is going to be very important. The last one is, I don't cover this in a minute, learning all the acronyms. I just hired a new accountant, and he's never worked in healthcare before. And so we'll sit in different meetings. At the end of the meeting, he'll have a whole list of these acronyms we talk about. He says, what in the world are you guys talking about? And sometimes we talk about things and just assume people know what they mean. Not so. We'll go through a few acronyms just to tease you a little bit. Healthcare opportunities, I'll put that pretty quickly. You know, when I first came to the first class, Mr. Martin talked to me a little bit about management style. Let me bring some questions up here. And I think it's important, particularly because you're all going to management operations, to think about your management style and what do you bring to it. Now, some of you are in your careers already and probably have management styles developed. I think some of you that haven't had a lot of opportunity to be in management yet would be finding you're going to develop some management styles. I apologize, I'm up here dealing with my kid training my new accountant, someone who didn't show up to training tonight, so that's management. You have to deal with those problems. I've got a patient financial services manager who ends up working more hours, more days of taking care of ER registration because her staff doesn't come in than anybody else I've known. That's management of staff. And no matter what area of operations you'll be in, you'll face challenges like that. And so hopefully you'll develop a management style that's comfortable to you, but achieves the purposes that your managers are hired for. What are some of the reasons you're hired as a manager? What are the purposes?
Delegate responsibilities.
Delegate, sure. And does that mean you can just, sorry, let me just, I'm trying to connect two people, I apologize. It's frustrating when you're trying to get some training done and it doesn't happen. How do you delegate? I mean, there's different ways to delegate. I've been in some environments where I was, if a lot was delegated to me, another word might be dumped on me. How do you delegate? What's the difference between delegating effectively and ineffectively?
Well, some people need to be micromanaged and some people you give them. I was a manager, so I've been a manager for different companies, but some people needed to be micromanaged and I needed to check on them every day. People, you give them a task and they'll complete. I guess you know who to micromanage and then micromanage because some people do not like to be micromanaged.
Sure.
And they just want to be given their responsibility. I don't like to be micromanaged. If you tell me something, I'll have it due by the day you tell me you want it due. And if you're checking on me, it's annoying. Other people, they need it.
I think that's where you as a manager become comfortable with that and be able to pick out those people who need that micromanagement with the phone and who doesn't. You can really stymie a lot of creativity by micromanaging too heavily on someone who doesn't need it. Now someone else, if you don't tell them what to do, it never happens. I read an article some years ago, it was called Delegation or Abdication. And there's a huge difference. And I think delegation is what we're talking about. Abdicating, where you just dump your responsibility on someone else because you don't want to do it, is the thing that is not a good manager. So that's part of your management style to be developed. Let's see if you're not here. balance sheet. I think you develop your own that you feel comfortable with, depending on your staff, and it has to change constantly. You might have someone who's wonderful, to follow, has so much conscientiousness, that falls no matter what it is. And others that you have to poke along the way about the staff. So I think that's the main thing, you just think about who you are, what you're comfortable with, your relations with others. I do think our purpose is to use our leadership style to improve the outcome of the organization we're with. And it needs to be flexible at times. I think our values don't necessarily change, hopefully not, but the way we manage people can change and how we work with them to bring the most out of them. Okay, acronyms. I'm going to give you a few of these and see how you do on these. And if you don't know them, that's okay. What does DSH stand for in health finance?
Disproportionate share in hospital.
Okay, what does that mean? What is it?
And the hospital can prove that they see like a certain number, like the cost of indigent patients that they see, they report that to the government, and the government reallocates back some of that money.
It's a recognition you're taking on a larger burden of patients, Medicaid patients who get reimbursed for it. The rate program accepted changes too. 2 years ago, we got $620,000 for disproportionate share. This past year, because of the changes, we got $400,000. We got an email the other day that we should expect 80% of that next year. So it's going down. Huge program, but for a hospital that only makes $670,000, that's first time in years. That's a big amount of money for us. So it varies by hospital, but we're dependent on that. IGT, does anybody know what that means? I didn't until I got to Fort Lavaca. It's an intergovernmental transfer. And we'll talk more about that, but it's a transit where a hospital transfers money to the state controller's office. The state is able to match and get the federal matching funds through certain qualifications, and then recycle that through. So you end up spending $600,000 and getting $900,000 back. It's a very good program, and it's matching funds. And we'll get into another acronym that helps describe the purpose of that. But just generally, intergovernmental transfers are used to match federal funds with state funds for the healthcare providers. UPL program, does anybody know what that is?
Repayment limit.
Can you describe that?
It's almost the physician type of DSH, dish. So it's that bridge between what you get and then what, offset.
Medicaid recognizes, you're right, Medicaid recognizes it does not pay enough for their patients. And then the federal government does too. And so what they do is they calculate the difference of what Medicare would pay that Medicaid patient. And the difference between what Medicaid pays and what Medicare would pay if it was a Medicare patient is called your upper payment limit, that difference in there. And so they're allowing hospitals to fund through the IGT program, their governmental programs, transfers, since they money to the state will pull down that upper payment limit funds from the federal government and then put that back in the hospital. It's very important to us, and hopefully that won't change too much. That's an acronym we're hearing a lot about. HPSA MUA, do you know what that is? We just applied for and received our HPSA designation. And it's
Health professional shortage area?
Healthcare professional shortage area. And then MUA is medical underserved area. HPSA for us, there's a couple of things that, these all seem like small things, but they end up being big things. A couple of the benefits we get is that we're hiring some physicians, so we'll have some employed physicians. With HPSA designation, our doctors will be able to get what their normal reimbursement is plus 10%. So that's big. Another one is that when we recruit physicians, a lot of them come in with, especially out of school, have student loan debts. And the HPSA, the qualified under programs, once you're HPSA eligible, allows certainly those student loans to be assisted in their repayment terms. So recruitment program is very good, important for us. Medicaid managed care. Same as any kind of managed care. Do you have a feel for what that is, managed care programs? Okay. Sometimes not in your head, but what's the managed care program?
Well, it's like it's like a private payer managing almost like a government program.
Okay.
Medicaid managed care.
Do you have anything to that?
Do I?
I'm sorry, that one in front, I'm sorry. Okay. Do you have anything? Yes, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'll stare more good. Managed care program, and all the providers have them now. It was small when I started out in healthcare, it's big now. It's basically a risk program where a company will say, okay, we'll provide care for this population of patients, and you give us a certain amount of money, and then the managed care company has to manage that money and go out and get providers to provide that care. If they provide more expensive care than what they receive from the government, they lose, or with whoever they're contracting with. On the other hand, if they do it real efficiently, they win and they make a profit. That's of course their intent. For a hospital setting, we contract with these managed care providers, be it Medicaid or Aetna or United or whoever, and we basically say, okay, pay us so much. The contract term will pay either percentage charges, a DRG, per diem, whatever it is, whatever we negotiate, and that's what we get paid. And it's up to us to manage that care profitably. But sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't. But managed care is the main thing in healthcare now. Waiver 1115. Have you heard about what that is? It's new with the last couple of years. It's big though. I'm going to read you something. I've tried to describe this, but I found this word and it's better. This was put out some time ago, but background, the 2011 Texas legislature directed HHSC to expand managed care to achieve savings to preserve hospital access to funding consistent with the UPL upper payment program. The best approach they came up with is to come up with a program they negotiated with the Medicare program nationally, and it's called the Waiver 1115 program. It's a 5-year demonstration program. It started in 2011. As we finally get started in 2013, but it's officially been on the books since 2011. And they're taking money that they think they're going to save through Medicaid managed care, recycling that with what's already being paid for uncompensated care. The hospitals pay for that, and they're matching those funds to give some incentives. It expands risk-based managed care statewide and preserves UPL funding, upper payment limit funding. So while the upper payment limit program has gone away, it's been replaced by the Waiver 1115 program. There's a lot of dollars there. It's to protect UPL funding and add additional new funds into a waiver pool. Those two pools are divided into 2 categories. The first is for uncompensated care. Now, hospitals take care of a lot of uncompensated care. And so the government's trying to recognize that and help us with that. And part of it's through DISH, some of it was through the upper payment limit program. We're bringing that all together now into what they call the Waiver 1115. There's some hooks to it. They're just not going to give it to us like we hoped at first. Uncompensated care costs reimbursable today, and additional uncompensated care costs not being reimbursed today. So they're trying to give us additional money because they know the financial difficulties we have. It's based on cost, not on charges, but I'll call it comes down to our cost. And the second pool is called a Delivery System Reform Incentive Payment Pool, that we refer to as DSRIP. So if you hear DSRIP, that's one of those terms I should put on my I think it's up here sooner. In a minute. This Delivery System Reform Incentive Payment Pool. And we had an opportunity to come up with certain projects, particularly to address access to care. That was one of the challenges we had mentioned, to improve access to care to our patients. And so we have been joined with Harris County. They have what they call anchor groups in the state. They're geographical kind of groups of providers. We're on the far south end of Harris County. But we decided to join with Harris County as an anchor group because there's certain benefits for us. You're part of an anchor group and you put together these different access programs. You can access in primary care, it can be emergency delivery, it can be, there's lots of them out there. And each of us put together our plans, proposed it to Medicare, and they're going to have to review and approve all these programs. But the idea is to put more control in the local providers' hands to come up with programs they think are important for their population and come up with matrices of measurement tools so that a year from now, when we try to get funding, they'll say, you did this, but you didn't do this. And our reimbursement will be based on that. So it's a little bit of a risk for us. It adds more dollars to us, but it's also more risk for us as providers. So that's what the waiver program is. There's 2 pools. Now, just to give you an example of the uncompensated care portion, about a month ago, we got a call from our representatives at the state Human Services Department. They said, okay, you need to send us a check for $650,000. You got 5 days to do that in. So we went through intergovernmental transfer. We transferred our funds, $650,000, and we sure hope things are going to work out. They told us ahead of time what we should expect back, and then within 2 days, we got a check back for $1,200,000. So they took our $650,000, that's part of this whole waiver program. It's funded by local providers, matched with state and federal funds, so we got in return over $700,000 back more than we gave them. If I could take that program like that and expand, that'd be great. But it won't happen all the time, but that's the kind of benefit that we can get through the incompetent care program. But they're gonna ratchet that program down each year over the next 5 years, so it's gonna be less and less. This year was great, we can't count on next year. Those are important things that you need to understand as operators, as you are in healthcare. There's great opportunities, you've gotta recognize them fast, take advantage of them, because they won't be there all the time. We're kidding with some consultants today, they said, as soon as the government finds out they're paying you too well, they'll start cutting the program back. They do. But, so that's what waiver 1115 program. UCC is the incompetent care program. We just talked about that. Medicare bad debt. It's for hospitals such as ours. Up until this year, we were able to be reimbursed 100% of Medicare bad debts. Now, those are Medicare patients who don't pay their deductible and co-insurance. We have to go through the normal collection efforts, 120 days of collection activities like we do anybody else. If we still can't get payment for it, we can submit it on our cost report to Medicare. And up until this year, they reimburse us 100%. They told us last year that's the days gone by. This year it'll be ratcheted down. Over the next 5 years, we'll be ratcheting that down about 15%. So what used to be a great program for us, because we had that bad debt out there, no matter how we try and collect it, we're not going to get it. It's still a good program, but we're going to be, it's going to be going away 80% down, although eventually down to 65%. So one of those things the government gives and the government takes away. Yes.
So are you going to require more like prepayments from those patients to keep it, like to try to estimate ahead of time and make them pay up front so that you don't not at risk for all of that money?
Yeah, we will certainly try that. I mean, we come up with prepayment programs, come with discount programs, not just, I mean, Medicare has some restrictions.
Yeah, I didn't know, yeah, that's how it was.
But overall, we look at anything we can do to help people pay up front, because once they're out the door, we never see money. And so we try and get their portion up front. But when they come in there and say, I'm a Medicare patient, I'm fixed income, and I can't afford it, and particularly through emergency rooms where we cannot turn them away, but we don't have much choice, so we take them. Now, it's elective procedures, like they come in and say, I'm going to have, I don't know, it's elective procedure that's not required, a non-emergent procedure, we can say, sorry, come back when you can pay your deposit or down payment or something. But for emergency room, where most of our patients come through, we have to take them no matter their ability to bear out. That's under EMTALA, and you'll find that the patients figure out that very quickly. And so we get a lot of no pays through our emergency room. They come and say, sorry, can't pay. There's nothing we can do about it. But yeah, we certainly are looking at programs like that. But that's one of those things that affects us financially as a healthcare provider. SDA, I won't go into, it's a Medicaid thing, a standard dollar amount is one of the reimbursement tools. It doesn't affect the critical access hospitals yet, but you may find that in some of the others. And just others I'll go through quickly. ADC, average daily census, that's one of those indicators of find out what's going on in your hospital. If it's going up or down, you want to know about it. Average length of stay for a critical access hospital, again, it has to be 4 or less days at the end of the year. It has to be 6 days 1 month and 2 days the next month. Any way you manage them, but year end, it's got to be under 4.0 average length of stay to keep our critical access hospital status. AOB, that's adjusted occupied bed. These are things that you'll get into. You may have those as reporting tools in your own individual facility. Not everybody focuses on all of these, but these are ones different ones that we've used over the years. MOR, monthly operating report. You used to have those as a CEO, didn't you?
Yep.
What value were they to you?
The value was in putting together your monthly operating report, because you came up with a 90-day plan, what you were going to do before you ever went across town to report. They're selective, so some months your numbers look good enough, they just say forget it. So
Those were good months.
Those were good months.
But your monthly operating report can vary a lot by who your CEO is, who your corporate is, what they're asking you for. But every facility should have some kind of reporting at the end of the month to be able to say, here's what we did. Frequently compared to a budget, frequently compared to prior periods, so you can put in kind of the context and say, this is a great month or a bad month. But there are operating reports, there's a lot of variety there. GL, that stands for General Ledger. We'll talk more about that. JV is a journal entry or journal voucher. That's what accountants use to prepare financial reports. This we talked about, I gave you the answer on that one. Can you recall what it was? Okay,
Delivery
good test.
system, recovery.
Delivery system. Oh gosh, I forgot it now. I think it's recovery. Let me see. Delivery system. Delivery system reform incentive payment program. That already got me.
Reform what?
Reform incentive payment program.
Okay.
Okay. Now, you might find that on a test, I don't know, but. In preparing this the first time, I went to one of the resources we use for training our trustees, our board of directors. And Texas puts out a Texas Group Access Hospital Trustee Guide. We'll go through this pretty quickly, so you can see the subjects they thought were important for a new board of director member to be aware of. I think that's all. No, okay. Yeah, these are things that they wanted the board of directors, the trustees to know. They have big responsibilities. Budget, we'll talk about annual audit, we'll talk about all these things quickly. Financial reports, reporting racial analysis. There's different kinds of racial analysis, financial planning. These down here I won't talk about as much, but financial planning is a big part of any company, healthcare or otherwise, investment policy, reimbursement, compliance, managed care. Taking them each, what's the purpose of a budget? Let me tell you an experience.
Ask the Senate.
Yeah, that's right. They don't pass them, do they?
Yeah.
Last September, Mr. Martin asked me to come and teach a summer class. The day before I came up here to teach a class, I got this CFO magazine in the mail, front page cover. Freed from the budget, CFOs are liberating themselves from the flawed process. There goes my presentation. What is the value of a budget? I mean, I still believe there's a value to a budget. Because in spite of this article, and it's an interesting article, but in your business, a family, your own personal, what is the value of a budget to you?